Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We will continue Quran Tafsir with a new approach to understand Quran by verses categorized in themes. Today we will continue this Quran Tafsir series from verses 15 to 20 of Suratul Fajr. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the last video, we said time is a key theme in this surah. We talked in detail about the people who possessed spiritual intellect in verse 5. Then we contrasted them with the people who possessed power to build nations in verses 6 through 13. Right in the center of this entire group of verses, Allah mentions that He is ever watchful. Then the topic of the verses go back to discussing the people who lacked spiritual intellect. Today we discuss in verses 15 through 20 about what are the characteristics of these people that make them chase materialism and forget about Allah and His messengers. At the end of this surah, the end of time arrives. Time branches off differently for those who regret and for those who return to Allah. Please watch part 1 of Suratul Fajr Tafsir to understand the first 4 verses where Allah swears by the 4 periods of time. When Allah swears by something, we must pay attention. Remember, Allah mentioned the people of spiritual intellect before that we discussed in detail in the last video. Now in verses 15 through 20, Allah describes who is the non-rational person or the one who lacks spiritual intellect. There are 3 characteristics pointed out within this group of verses. And interestingly, there are 2 verses for each characteristic. Verses 15 through 16 shows the purely materialistic view of life, which is one of the characteristics of this type of person without spiritual intellect. This person regards the wealth and power of this world as everything. When he has possession of wealth, he's filled with pride and says, Allah has honored me. When he has less wealth, he says, Allah has humiliated me. This person does not understand that whatever Allah has given is for the purpose of a trial. So what is the trial for the wealthy? Allah gives wealth and power to see if the person becomes grateful and spends in Allah's way. If Allah has made someone poor, the trial is to see whether he remains content and patient in the will of Allah. Can he face the hardships bravely and still remember Allah? Verses 17 and 18 show the second characteristic of this type of person who lacks spiritual intellect. They are not spending in the way of Allah for the orphans and the needy. Allah makes 2 negative statements here. They do not fulfill the rights of the orphans and they are not encouraging feeding of the poor. Prophet ﷺ said, the guardian of the orphan and I will be like these 2 in paradise, and he put his 2 fingers together. In verses 19 to 20, Allah shows the third characteristic of this type of person who lacks spiritual intellect. It is the one who has excessive love of wealth to the point of taking from the right of another. During that time period, among Arabs, the women and children were deprived of inheritance. The one who was more powerful and influential among the heirs would take the inheritance. This type of person is doing 2 things that Allah points out. First, consuming of inheritance wrongfully, and secondly, gathering wealth with too much love of hoarding and greed. We all know of some people who can never have enough wealth, and they can chase it as if this is their only goal or purpose in life. Please watch out and stay tuned for the next video where we continue Suratul Fajr. If you have benefited, please like, subscribe, comment, and keep watching this series. Please also check out my book on Amazon where I explore the verse connections of Surah Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.